Have you ever wanted to blade a Winston chasing you and come out of the fight without a scratch? Or, confidently blade 1v4 because you know there's basically no chance you will fail? Well, those are the kind of plays that you can now make due to Dragon's Thirst, Genji's strongest perk by far. 30% lifesteal is so crazy that I'm surprised this is a minor perk instead of a major one. It's so strong in fact, that oftentimes it makes an enabling combo like Nano or Ray feel like a waste, which opens up the opportunity to cycle between these ultimates as win conditions instead of having to stack them to guarantee a clean fight. With that being said, it's important not to let this power get to your head, or you'll end up biting a bit more than you can chew. Trust me, I've been limit testing to know. Maximizing the value you get out of this perk comes in two ways. The first one is very simple. Just do what you were doing previously, but with decreased risk due to the extra sustain. Blade is a win condition most of the time, so making it more consistent goes a long way towards giving you more control over the outcome of matches, especially when you consider how important ult fights are in Overwatch. Lots of maps have areas that are practically designed to only be possible to capture with ultimates, and since you can only farm a few of those throughout an entire game, wasting these power spikes can mean the difference between a solid offense and a pitiful push. This means that defenders will also pay a lot of attention to these crucial fights, so no matter which side you're on, being more confident in your win condition is huge. The second and more exciting use of this perk is to allow you to go for plays that weren't reasonable to go for previously due to the risk being too high to be worth the gamble. Just be aware that these main character blades have just as much of a chance to throw a match as they do of clutching it, so evaluate carefully when it's worth it to play the odds. For example, in this clip my team got ran over, but I managed to find a pick, survive on my own, and clutch another duel, which gave me a choice. Rush to the payload and try to hold first point, or give it up and get out alive. I went for the hero play, and unfortunately didn't contest in time, but if I did, we would have been in amazing shape as we managed to win the fight, and so we would only need to keep defending for a minute, which would have been very reasonable to do, as our opponents wouldn't be able to farm another set of ultimates to break through our stronghold. On the other hand, failing to touch card and thus wasting blade is certainly not desirable, but it's not the end of the world, as the high ground on second point offers us a major advantage, and so it would be unlikely that I would need to use blade anytime soon to hold the area, meaning that I could probably farm up a new ult from scratch before I found myself in a situation that required it, drastically minimizing the downside of my failed play. To summarize, the stakes were much higher for our opponents than they were for us, meaning that the expected value from this play was in my favor, or, in simpler terms, I had much more to win than I had to lose. Alright, let's go back to the more tangible stuff. The thing I love the most about this perk is that I don't have to rely on supports anymore to heal up any chip damage I take, something that's incredibly valuable in a solo queue environment as it gives you more control over the outcome of a match. The reason why this is such a big deal is that your health is a resource, which you can spend to fulfill a specific purpose, just like your more straightforward resources like cooldowns. For example, in this old clip I'm blading a Brig, which means my dash and deflect already have purposes assigned to them, as the only way I can chase her if she bashes away is with dash, and so I need my deflect to block the whip shot. This means that the only resource I have to deal with their damage output is my HP, and so if my opponents get me low before I can carefully outplay Brig's cooldowns, I will be forced to use deflect to stay alive and thus lose my counter to their boop. But since that didn't happen, I was able to perfectly execute my plan and succeed. These next clips operate under the same framework. I spend some of my HP to fulfill a specific purpose like baiting cooldowns out so that I can react accordingly, and the only reason I'm able to properly pace my resource usage is because of the extra sustain I'm getting, either from a Zen Orb, which essentially does the same as the perk would, or, well, with the perk. At this point, I believe I've proved my point that giving Genji sustain is really strong. So let's talk about his major perk, Meditation. Regenerating up to 50 health may not sound like a big deal, and frankly speaking, it isn't when you compare it to the power of other majors like Double Nano, but it does help quite a bit. You can use it in most duels to change breakpoints and live one more shot, increasing your odds of winning it and thus gaining an advantage for that fight. Another good use case is holding an angle, which now becomes easier as getting chipped is less likely to force you out. The reason people sleep on this perk is because it isn't flashy, and so it is hard to feel the value it provides, which is not something you can say about blade twisting, as the tiki-tikis at least give you some dopamine when active and sound very useful in theory, as they should help you achieve better breakpoints on targets, thus helping you get value. In practice, however, the damage is too weak and too slow on top of being extremely situational, even with blade activating it on every swing, which I can only assume is a bug. Also, Genji is already one of the best characters in the game at snowballing fights, and becoming even better at that is redundant, so what's the point? To summarize, if you can get value out of the bleed, then you don't need it. The healing deflect on the other hand is always useful, meaning that it improves you in areas that could actually use the help. The main argument I've heard against it is that the healing isn't going to bail you out of bad plays, which, while true, is a flawed way of thinking, as this is the same as judging the competence of a fish by its ability to climb a tree. The point of meditation is to increase the consistency of your plays and allow you to go for slightly riskier ones than what you would usually be comfortable going for, just like Dragon's Thirst does. If they end up making the difference, awesome! And if they don't, I'm glad you didn't even need them. After all, being in a situation where these perks are dead weight is ideal, which is not something that can be said about the other ones, can it? Yikes, imagine a situation where you can't get a single elimination. You might be wondering why I've only talked about 3 perks so far when all characters get 4, and that's because acrobatics is so situational you will literally never pick it in 1,000 games. Having double jump reset on dash is useless unless you're using the ability multiple times before touching the ground, as someone that wants to double jump after the dash in a normal situation will simply save their only charge for after dashing in. This basically narrows down the usefulness of this perk to blade only due to the free dash reset upon use and the fast time to kill during ult, which is required for you to keep chaining double jumps in the air, since otherwise you would just land on the ground to reset it normally. Now that we understand the requirements for acrobatics to actually do something, we need to think about situations where the extra jumps would be useful. Does anyone have any ideas? No? Yeah. At first I couldn't find any, until I watched this clip.
Is Zen still behind? You guys can live, game mega. You guys can do it.
The only use for this perk is killing flyers, or more specifically, multi-killing them, because you can already get a single one if you manage your resources perfectly, such as in this example. So yeah, there is a use for acrobatics, but at that point you should either swap or target the people on the grounds that are left to fend for themselves. In conclusion, pick the sustain perks, as the other 2 are either pointless or incredibly niche. I would love to actually have options to think through and carefully choose between, so I'm working on a video brainstorming lots of ways to tweak the current ideas into actually balanced options, as well as suggesting new ones for the future, so if you're interested in that, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. If you want to make great use of Dragon's Thirst, check out this video teaching you how to get perfect blades every time.